Hi, welcome back to CLOSEUP. I'm Stacey Shoemaker-Rowan, Editor-in-Chief of Hospitality Design Magazine and the Senior Vice President of the Design Group at our parent company, Emerald. Thank you for joining us in the afternoon. Hopefully you're enjoying this amazing day of brand presentations and trend conversations. I'm so excited to introduce Anya and Ezra Ardolino, who are the founders of Timbur. Welcome to CLOSEUP. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And so you started off as a custom fabrication company, and now you're launching original furniture of your own. And we're really excited to kind of delve into your experimentation and creativity and innovation today. I know we have a video to start out with, but can you tell us a little bit about of what we're about to see?
Sure. I'm Ezra Ardolino. I'm the founder of Timbur. Maybe take a quick moment to just express some gratitude and thank you for having us today, and for everybody for dialing in and watching. It's really our pleasure to be here. And you know, that's right. Our company, we're a fabrication company. That's where we started, you know, and it's been a number of years and it's been quite a journey. And it's really great to now to be at a point where we can take all of our experience and knowledge, design some things, turn it around and put them back out into the world.
It's amazing. And so what are we going to see in the video? What have you guys done for us?
Sure. So my name's Anya Ardolino, and Ezra and I partner both at home, where we're raising our 3 incredible daughters, and at Timbur, where we're continually growing and developing our business. And we're very excited to share this video with everyone. It takes you kind of to our beginning, a little bit of pre-Timbur and Ezra's architectural journey, or educational journey in architecture, I should say, as well as the fabrication side of our business. And we touch on some of the really cool projects that we've had the good fortune of collaborating on. And then we turn into a look at the new product offerings that we have, both Stack and Bark. Yeah, and I think it's a really comprehensive view of who we are and Timbur as an organization.
Well, can't wait to see, and then we'll dive into it a little bit after we watch it. So let's play the video.
Hi, I'm Ezra Ardolino. I'm the founder of Timbur.
Hi, and I'm Anya Ardolino, and I'm a partner at Timbur, and I manage the business side of the organization.
Timbur is a digital fabrication company, and we collaborate with artists, architects, and designers to fabricate custom projects. When we're not fabricating for others, we're engaging in our own design, research, and product development. You know, digital fabrication is really any manufacturing method that takes the virtual information of a computer model and renders it as a real physical object in the world. In the case of us, you know, digital fabrication really manifests in terms of CNC and robotic machining. Those are the 2 areas that we really tend to focus on. And, you know, like the name implies, we fabricate many different things, but we have a particular interest in wood, and that's really something that's special to us. For Timbur, one of the most interesting things about our company is the fact that we have an industrial robot that we use. It's sitting right behind me. It's really an amazing tool, and there's a few things about the industrial robot that really differentiate it from other forms of digital fabrication. One way that I like to think about it and look at it is that it has nearly a universal envelope, right? It can kind of reach and go anywhere. So where a regular CNC machine would be limited in terms of the envelope that it can use to manufacture, the robot becomes much more open and universal. After earning my master's degree, I had an opportunity to work for a number of really awesome architecture firms. From there, I had an opportunity to go and teach. I taught at Cornell for a number of years and Pratt Institute for a number of years. And through that time, I really developed a really keen understanding of where digital fabrication fits into the world of architecture, art, and design.
Prior to joining Ezra in business at Timbur, I actually have a background in biology, and I worked in pharmaceuticals for 15 years. Ezra and I are both from New Jersey. However, we met in Colorado. We went to school in Colorado, and early on in our relationship, I was really impressed with how smart Ezra was. I was always taken by his ability to understand math and engineering like it was second nature. And all the while also having an interest in and a really clear passion for the arts. He was always into painting and sculpture and being creative and design.
I was teaching at Pratt. I was spending a lot of time in Brooklyn, and I wound up meeting a few different furniture makers in Brooklyn over in the Navy Yard. While I knew a lot about digital fabrication, I was meeting a bunch of people that knew a whole lot about furniture. And that's really important in terms of how we got to where we are today. I love to take things, work on them, imagine them, and then make them real. I mean, that process is really fundamental. Over the years, fabricating for so many different people, so many amazing people, we've learned a lot. And that really informs your own knowledge, it informs your own ability to design. You know, I have a deep passion for architecture, deep knowledge, education in architecture, and furniture is really interesting because it's actually able to participate in a number of different architectures while doing its own kind of thing. And I think that's great because I think as a person, I kind of want to participate in a whole bunch of different architectures, just like our furniture is able to. So Stack is the first line of products that Timbur has brought to the market, and it exists in 4 formats: a seat, a stool, a bench, and a table. For the longest time, you know, since we got the robot, I've had the idea or the desire to take large pieces of wood, tree trunks if you will, put them in front of the robot and let the robot have at it. We contacted all of the local tree services around here, told them that we were interested in having, you know, them bring over their logs, and before we knew it, the parking lot was full of logs. What happened was, in some ways, it was a really kind of a huge failure. You take a log and you machine it, there's a ton of water in there. So much water that when you're machining it, there's a little rooster tail of water that shoots up from the bit. I mean, it's amazing. And it'd be growing all sorts of different fungus and molds, right? I mean, it was insane. And we would go through this process, we would machine these pieces, they were gorgeous, right? But they weighed a ton. At the same time, and you know, throughout the history of our company really, we've done a whole bunch of projects where we've had to stack material up, glue it together, and then machine it back down into a shape. That process is called stack lamination. And that's core to our knowledge. That's something that we've known about for a long time. So really, what happened was a translogical moment. We understood the design work that we were doing and the interest that we had in machining these logs, and the failure of it in terms of material system, but then at the same time understood that there was another material system out there that we knew a lot about that we were able to translogically take and apply to the work that we were doing with the logs. That synthesis is really the origin of Stack. What's interesting about that, both in terms of the form, if you will, right, of the pieces and the materiality of them, is the way that they come together and can work to make something that is neither stack lamination only or tree trunks only. That to me, I mean, that's how my design mind works. I love to take things like that and look for similarities between disparate sorts of interests and then put them together. That's a challenge I always like to embrace. Plywood as a material, in and of itself, is interesting. It's many layers of sort of undesirable wood, if you will, laminated with the grain and crossing directions to make a stable core, and then oftentimes a nice face is put on it, a veneer. And that's the idea. It's a really strong core with a pretty face. Stack, using the stack lamination process, is a bit of a subversion of that. There's no face at all. We are taking the material and exposing it for its core only. All of the material texture and beauty that's in these pieces of furniture comes from the expression of the core as opposed to the face of a piece of plywood. When you do that, you know, you open up challenges, but you also open up a new understanding for a material that's been around for a really long time, and I think that's of value. One of the things that we do for these pieces of furniture that's interesting, we developed a process for applying a translucent finish to our stack line, and what it does is it colors it, but it lets the texture of the material read through. The first piece in the stack line is the stack seat. It's a cylindrical form with a 10-degree forward lean and a custom carved seat scoop. The next piece in the stack line is the stack stool. Similar to the seat, it's a cylindrical form with a 10-degree forward lean, but at a smaller footprint. And the seat scoop has been replaced with a flat top and a custom rounded over edge. The stack bench is a natural continuation of the stack product line. It's the same general form as the stack stool, stretched for more people to sit. The fourth piece in the stack line is the stack table. Again, it's a similar form to the stack stool, only with a larger surface area to be used as a table. The idea behind it is to keep the form simple so that the materiality comes through and then it can become a real participant in a number of different architectures. Bark's a really interesting line of products that takes interest and passion for working with wood and couples it with research into texture mapping within a computer environment, where we can take three-dimensional scan data from the bark of a tree, manipulate it in the computer, then reapply it to a piece of wood. And what happens there is this incredible moment of sort of disconnect and reconnect of an understanding of a natural artifact. Tree bark is an amazing thing. You look at it, you see it on a tree. It's incredibly beautiful. It's incredibly complex texture. that comes from nature, and it performs in a really particular way that helps that tree live. What we're doing is taking that, and we're taking the bark, taking the texture of the bark and decoupling it from its source, using it as a moment for a design intervention, and then reapplying it to the log. I love making things, and it's incredibly satisfying to have an idea and then have the ability to make that something real in the world. With Stack and Bark, I feel like we've really only scratched the surface and opened up a vast territory of design possibilities. And as our knowledge of technology continues to grow and our knowledge of material continues to grow, we really look forward to seeing where this goes and what opportunities, both for ourselves independently and in collaboration with our clients, to see where this can lead.
Wow, that was pretty amazing. Thank you for putting that together and just seeing how your processes and the manufacturing and the technology, and I think that really speaks to your architecture and your architecture background.
Yeah, totally. And the time I spent teaching too, has a profound effect really on the way that we sort of run the business and the studio in general. Everything we do kind of has a bit of a research feel to it, and all of our creative intent really sort of bubbles up from a deep understanding of materials and fabrication methods, right? And to be able to take that in an environment like a company really, and use that as the mode to sort of drive the work forward is really something that's kind of special. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Do you miss teaching?
I do. I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's incredibly time consuming, and so is owning a business, right? So it's really tough, to be able to do both things simultaneously. But I often get opportunities to go back in and maybe give a lecture or talk to a group of students or something like that, and it's always really wonderful.
Yeah. I feel like you'd be a great teacher, so that's what I was asking. Talk about the R&D and the timeline and the process to create these amazing products.
Sure. So, I mean, in general, some of the ideas that are in here, they've been sort of percolating for a really long time. I mean, little things like my interest in the sort of edge of birch plywood, right? I found out about that material a really long time ago. I was like, oh wow, there's a plywood that has an edge that's not so bad. That's a really interesting to pursue. Didn't make any of it. Long time later again, right? Then we have things happen, right? We have a robot. We have clients that are asking us to do work like this, right? We have a lot of factors that come into play. So about 2 years ago, we were able to say, you know what? Let's start doing some of this stuff. We have some ideas we want to do on our own. Then interestingly, I think the other part of it that really is sort of prescient sort of right now for us is the pandemic happened, right? And it gave us a big pause, right? It gave us an opportunity to stop, take stock of what's going on, think about the products, think about what kind of company we wanted to be in the future, right? And really gave us an opportunity to take this stuff and push it forward.
That's amazing. And I love how you took something like a plywood and rethought it, right? Or the use of it.
Totally. I mean, having something like that, like a little bit of a hook, right, is really important for the work, right? We're not, just solely interested in furniture, nor are we solely interested in manufacturing, right? It's really the coming together of all those things that make it really interesting for us, and being able to take a dive on something like plywood and be like, okay, so we kind of know how plywood works, right? Let's get in there, let's see what else there is maybe to find, right? That kind of exploration is something that, it's really good for us, yeah.
And I love how some of this seems like experimentation, but it leads to invention and innovation, like the tree trunks. I mean, how many tree trunks did you have dropped off in front of your place?
Right. I mean, So in some senses, it could seem like a trial and error kind of a thing, but it's not really, right? I mean, it's kind of like trial in progress, right? None of the things that we try to do or experiment with or explore, they're not in the blind. Right? They're based on all the years of experience and the knowledge and the things that we're researching and looking into. And the other interesting thing about that is there's never really a failure, right? Every time you go down a path and you sort of find yourself, oh, wow, that happened, right? It's really just showing you the path forward. It's not telling you to stop, right? And that's a really sort of fundamental kind of thing in our perspective that we, are able to use.
I love that. You take a challenge and you learn from it, or, lesson learned, and it gives you something new.
It does, yeah. And that really, I mean, that's like a lifelong lesson.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's one to keep in mind.
Right.
And can you talk more about your word, which I think we need a coin, and translogic?
Right. Okay, so translogical is a term that I was introduced to in grad school. It showed up in a couple of texts, right? And it was discussed at the time a bit. But it stuck with me, right? And it resonates with me to this day, right? And you can see it kind of in the furniture. We talk about it in the video, right? Where you're taking the logic from one material system and applying it to a design logic that was sort of different to begin with, right? but it's not necessarily like a transplantation process. It's not a substitute, right?
Right.
It's something a little bit deeper than that, right? And really it's the idea that all of these different systems that are at play in a project, right? All these, the material system, the fabrication system, all of those things, they all have their own logics that they're operating by. And you know, as a designer or fabricator, you need to figure out how to kind of float among them, right? And let them talk to one another, right? Because it's really a conversation that happens between material and fabrication, and that's what leads to the innovation. That's where something new happens, right? The plywood is telling the tree trunk how to do something like that, and the tree trunk is sort of putting up a little bit of resistance, right? But then you wind up with something that's neither, right? And that's really kind of the idea and how that kind of works for us.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
And so what surprised you most about Stack when you were creating it? And it's beautiful. We have it here.
I mean, thank you. What's interesting about Stack, like in that sense, I mean, there's a couple things. One thing that's really simple that happened out of it. You know, when you take it, and there's a perfect example right here. This is the Stack stool, right? When you take the plywood, birch plywood, and you machine it at a bit of an angle, right? It starts to expose all the layers of the plywood, and that's it's a really amazing effect that happens. And you know, I'd always understood it as sort of this way of registering different heights or contours, if you will. But when it comes like this, right, it really just becomes a texture all on its own. And you know, we've done some experimentation where you can open up the grain even wider, right? It's amazing. It's amazing what kind of can happen right there. That's one thing about it. There's one other little thing about it too, which is that through this process of working with the material, right, and the tree trunks and all that kind of stuff, they've developed a bit of their own character. Yeah. And they have you know, it's really kind of interesting. And there's a few moves that happen in there that we're able to take and then sort of change the format of, but there's a language that's been built up in this that now is able to be used. We're developing a shelf right now and a different kind of table and a mirror and all these other pieces that sort of go with the line. What's amazing though is that there's a vocabulary there to be able to do that with.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what about bark? What surprised you there?
Bark's totally different idea, right? It's a totally different thing. And I mean, that's really all about texture mapping in the computer environment. And you know, that's another thing that had been a little bit of an interest of mine for a long time, right? It's how video games are made and obviously renderings of architectural spaces and things like that. But I've always seen and known in there that there's a whole bunch of control. There's a whole bunch of room to go in there and start to manipulate these things. Right. And these first two series of bark that we did, it's really, you know, just the beginning of that. Like there's so much territory in there to go in and still uncover that, you know, we're like really amped up and excited to keep working in there. Yeah.
Well, I feel like this could be great for so many different environments and applications. I mean, where do you see it? Where do you hope this starts to live and be? And
well, we've actually had interest across all sorts of settings. We've had interest in residential, commercial, hospitality. So we really think that these products would work almost anywhere.
Right. I don't disagree. And so, okay, so going back to business, pandemic, you know, partners in love and life and business, what's it been like? I mean, to you know, get through this past year, working together, 3 kids at home. I mean, as mom of 3 as well. You know, just tell me what's it been like? And I know it's been good that you've taken a pause, but what's been your silver lining or takeaway from all of this?
Yeah, I think the silver lining is the way that we've been able to refocus our energy. Yeah. Really. I mean, you know, like things had been bumping along at quite a clip for a long time, and we always wanted to do these things, but just didn't have the space to do them. I mean, aside from that, you know, 3 kids at home in a pandemic, you can't leave the house. I mean, it's tough. You know, it's not. It's not an ideal sort of circumstance for life in general.
It's amazing.
Right. Yeah.
No, and I think just to add to that, having the opportunity to really develop our product line has kind of driven the fabrication side of our business forward as well, which has been really interesting to see. So we're finding the more research that we do, the more that we innovate, the more solutions we have to offer our clients as well as to the industry at large. So that's been really interesting to see.
Yeah. Do you see any new materials that you might start playing with? Is there another one? I mean, besides that.
I mean, sure. Yeah. You know, like there's a lot of there's a number of different things that we've looked into, and actually, you know, it's when Anya just mentioned about the fabrication business and the product side of things. Like, the one really drives the other, right? You know, to make a pun, like 2 sides of the same sheet of plywood, right?
Yeah.
Like, but the general the way that kind of helps us is that, you know, while one is sort of, reflective, right, in some ways on our knowledge and other things, when we work in that territory, then it becomes projective in what we can do for other people. So there's this oscillation that occurs that's really kind of fantastic, right? It's unique probably to our type of business, yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And this kind of grit and innovation and, just like getting into it and being curious, I guess, is that a big part of your culture at Timbur?
It is. I mean, it's a big part, and it runs right through our entire team. And I definitely should take a moment to thank our team. I mean, we have an amazing team at the shop that works incredibly hard for us. And really, it wouldn't be possible to do this without them. And it's a really fantastic group of people. And really, to be a member of that team, right, it is different, right? It's a different, culturally, it's different, right? It's not a kind of environment where we're just about production and manufacturing all the time. We have to take the time to understand what it is that we're doing, right? Oftentimes, we will, for a scenario, right, you have to get it right.
Right.
But we don't know what right is.
Right.
Right.
It's kind of cool though. That
yeah. And the person, people have to be comfortable in that environment to succeed with us. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't. Not for everyone, but it's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the robot. You can't forget about the robot. It must be kind of like a team player.
The robot's awesome. I mean, I don't think I touched on it in the video. That robot is actually repurposed from the automotive industry.
Cool.
Yeah, and to be able, and it took a lot of work to make it work. I mean, it's not like it's ready to go.
Right.
Like it's, other machines we buy, they come with an instruction manual and all this stuff. The robot just showed up, right? And we had to figure out how a lot of old technology actually worked to get it to do some new things for us, which is a fun problem to have.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, I don't know, for every one thing we do with it, there's probably like 10 or 15 things in my mind that are rattling around that we could do with it, and that's just kind of the journey we're on and where we're headed with this, yeah.
Love it. Well, can't wait to see what you do next. Congrats on these amazing collections. Where can everyone find you guys?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so Timbur products can be viewed in person in a gallery setting at 2 Lest Factory on 7th Avenue in Chelsea, which we're very excited about.
We are, and anyone can participate in our innovation by following us on Instagram at Timbur LLC.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone for watching.